Hello everybody, this is ManuS and welcome back to my second metagame breakdown for Legends of Runeterra, the next dataset from mobalytics, and the deck tracker of Masters games is available, and I once again checked it out and gonna bring you the top 5 most popular decks and the top 5 best performing decks and give you my thoughts on them, and will of course show you the most popular list of the overall archetype. Once again, keep in mind that's just the most popular list of the archetype. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the best list, but since we don't have a clear way of figuring out what the best list is, they only give us the most popular list per archetype, not the best performing, because that is always relative to the sample size, so it's hard to set clear rules for what the best performing version of a deck is. Alright, so without further ado, let's dive right in. Okay, so first off, the new most popular deck since the latest balance patch is actually this Burn Aggro deck. It was created by Gummi and allnewbagels and piloted by a couple of other people to success. This is their latest version that I could find, and also the most popular list that was listed in the dataset. By the way, as usual, you can find a link to the data sheet in the description down below. In general, you can find all important info in the description down below. There will not be links to the decks or codes of the decks down there, because it would just be too much information given that we're talking about 10 deck lists and all. But the datasheet has the full deck list, and you can just manually build them if you want to build these specific example deck lists. And they're also only meant to be example deck lists. They are not my recommendation of what version of this archetype you should play. In some cases, I don't have a strong opinion what the best list is. In other cases, I'm trying to figure it out and then bring it to you in a deck tech, or I already made a deck tech and shared it with you. So yeah, this is the Burn deck. There are a couple of variations. Some people play a couple of Jinxes, like 2 Teemo, 2 Draven, 2 Jinx, for example, mix around a couple of things here and there, but the core of the cards remains the same. This deck is hyper aggressive and just tries to get your Nexus health low and then burn you out with burn spells like Decimate and Co. The deck is pretty efficient and was the new popular archetype to come out of the balance patches. Not because it was buffed from the balance patches, but because the nerfs of other strategies created more room for new things, and this is a deck that emerged from this. One could argue that this deck would have even been good before the balance patch and people just kind of found it after, which is also very possible. Anyway, we move on to the next deck. Next we have Alanta's Ramp Control, Shadow Isles Freljord. He hit rank 1 at least, I think, twice with this since the balance patch dropped, which is a big factor in why it is so popular, I think. To be fair, this includes all kinds of Freljord, Shadow Isles control variants, and there are other versions, so this is just the most popular version of the overall Freljord Shadow Isle control archetype. Yeah, just your go-to control deck. Ramps up, plays all the efficient answers. The nerf of Deny and the subsequent reduction in popularity of the card opened up a lot of room for cards like Vengeance, Ruination, and War Mother's Call to be much more playable when you're not getting blown out by a 3-mana Deny left and right. So yeah, deck has clearly done really well for Alanta, and a lot of people seem to like this archetype now. So if you're into control decks, this deck was already popping up on our win rate chart before the balance patches, so not too surprised that with the balance patch it's now also showing up on the popularity chart. We'll see if it still makes it into the top 5 win rate decks though, which is going to be the interesting part. Anyway, let's move on to the next archetype. Next we have the Eznuk or the Ezreal Elnuk combo deck. It's basically just an Ezreal combo deck that's trying to control the game until it can level Ezreal and then just burn you out, potentially even from 20. And since it's just so powerful and kind of a free roll, it plays the Troop of Elnuks, full Elnuk package for random high rolls and winning that way. Sometimes you just play a Troop of Elnuk, pull 3 or 4 Elnuks, and just win the game on turn 5. That's kind of the additional angle. And if not, they help you lower the opponent's health to make winning with Ezreal easier and play defense really well to make sure you don't die until you can combo them out. This is one of the decks that was expected to reign supreme after the balance patch. It actually didn't take over that much, but as we can see, it's still very popular. And we will see in the top 5 highest win rate decks how it fared there. But it's certainly one of the top 5 decks in the metagame. So a deck that you want to be prepared for with your deck choice and also capable of piloting against. This specific version is Hyped's version that he posted. That seems to be the most popular, but there's because I think he was the first one that made like a major tweet after the balance patches with this, and might have hit rank 1, I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, there are a couple of versions of this. Usually you see a variation in the number of Avaros and Marksmans. Sometimes there is a Rummage, sometimes there's none. Some people play 2, some people play 3 Progress Day, and then some versions, especially if they play fewer Marksmen, play a number of Avaros and Sentry, and there's a couple of other one-offs that rotate in and out, like True Shot Barrage, Entreat, that sort of stuff. There is a bit of room for adjusting the deck, but the core 35, 36 cards basically remain stable among versions. But this happens to be the most popular exact list of the 1513 games played. Alright, let's move on to archetype number 4. Fourth most popular, very close behind Ezreal, is actually still Elusives. It looks kind of different than before, but clearly the deck is hard to kill. As we can see, the balance changes only did so much. They more changed how the deck looks than the viability of the deck, it seems. This is actually my version, which differs 1 card from the most popular version. The most popular version obviously being Zigzago's, because he hit rank 1 once or twice with his version. He has 1 Deny and 3 Will of Ionia, where I think a 2-2 split is better with all the Ruinations running around, because not drawing a Deny in those matchups makes the matchup really hard, and you often lose because of the Ruination, while if you draw 1 Deny, the matchup is almost impossible to lose, in my experience. Anyway, short backstory to the deck. Basically, the deck kind of emerged early after the balance patches. I actually faced a guy named Agent Alexei on ladder, who was on a similar list. He had Empyreans, and he had Omen Hawks and Protectors and Kinkus, and was almost mono Ionia. I didn't know if and what additional Freljord cards he had, for example. I just played 1 game against him, but I really liked the idea of like an almost mono Ionia, Kinku Wayfinder, Protector, sort of mid-range, drop a big Protector buffed 7-drop Elusive and kill people that way. I was quite impressed after the game. So I built basically this version right after, tweeted it out, shared it on a competitive master Discord that I'm on. From there on, a guy named Agigas picked it up, hit rank 5 with it, going on a nice run. And then it kind of, a couple of other people on the Discord picked it up in master, and yeah, Zigzag basically faced it a couple times on ladder and quite liked the list, and he's an elusive guy and he wanted to find a new deck to go for rank 1, so he reverse engineered the version, and he made one critical change. he just ran 3 hatchlings and 0 Empyreans, which makes a lot of sense. And I don't know how I got baited into the Empyrean by the original guy, given that even like in the very beginning of the format when Sixer was still playing the Empyrean Freljord Elusive midrange deck, I quickly replaced them with hatchlings because hatchling is such a much more powerful card and on average deals a lot more damage. So there's really no reason to run Empyrean, but the kind of protector thing baited me into it, so props to Sixo for seeing that and making the according adjustment. So yeah, one tweet and a share on a competitive Discord makes stuff like that spread like wildfire, and I'm currently working on a deck tech for this archetype, trying different splash variants and seeing what exact list I like the most, so you can look forward to that in the next few days once I figured out all the details and recorded it. So yeah, this is the new phase of Elusives. Elusives are still going strong. They are not quite as up in the popularity chain yet anyways, because it took a little for the deck to really catch on, but I would expect, without any major changes in the next data dump, for Elusives to be again in probably the top 2 popularity, but we'll see how that shakes out. Anyway, if you liked old Elusives, here you have new Elusives. Feel free to pick it up and jam it just like the old one. It will serve you well. And the 5th most popular deck is another old favorite from the pre-patch metagame. It's Fearsome. Fearsome is still around. It just kind of dropped Ionia as the most popular variant and embraced Demacia for Relentless Pursuit, Vanguard Redeemer, and in this case Radiant Guardian. The original idea goes back to the original creator of the deck, Naviut, and UnjustCharlie's hit rank 9 with this list by adding Radiant Guardian and cutting the Rasas that Naviut was still running. Not sure how I feel about this. I do like splashing as little as possible, because even with the change to Racecaller, the card is still super powerful, and it's even more important to hit that Mist Wraith now that Racecaller doesn't have Fearsome and is a much weaker unit if it doesn't hit on the Allegiance. But yeah, UnjustCharlie hit rank 9 with this. This is the most popular version, but there are a couple of variants, basically 1 to 2 Relentless Pursuit, and up to 2 to 4 other Demacia cards are usually found in this list. A lot of people have dropped or reduced number of Rasas. Some people still run it. Naviut, for example, even had 3 because he didn't like anything else over the 3rd, even though he wasn't super happy with the 3rd. He talked about this on Twitter. So yeah, even Fearsome got knocked down in popularity as you would expect from the patch, but is far from gone and still alive and kicking in the top 5 most popular decks. Something that both for Elusives and Fearsome I was kind of expecting with the changes, since the balance changes were good and impactful, but not in a way that they destroyed either archetype. So it makes sense for them to still be around and be competitive, popular decks, but being reduced in popularity from before, where before they were kind of in an unhealthy dominant position. They are now more one of various popular archetypes, and as we can see here in the game numbers, all the popular archetypes are a lot closer together in popularity, while if you remember last time, the discrepancy between games played for, say, Fearsome to Elusive was already like 4,000 to 3,000-ish, I think, and then from like Elusives to the others was even bigger, so the 3rd or 4th most popular deck had like maybe half as many games played as Fearsome, which also showed in terms of data how dominant and or oppressive Fearsome was, and now it's knocked down back to a reasonable amount. For people that hated the deck, that's bad news because it's still around. You will still face it quite a bunch and it's still good, but you won't face it like every other game anymore, basically, like it was before. Alright, that concludes the top 5 most popular decks. Now we look at the top 5 highest win rate. Once again, I sticked to a sample size of 500 or more games to not get like super small sample sizes in there and kind of set a bar for where we start looking for highest win rate rather than just looking at a whole data set where there are like double digit archetypes with really high win rates that are not really saying much. So let's take a look at the highest win rate deck since the balance patch. So this is pretty surprising actually. It is the good old Shadow Isles Noxus Spider Aggro. The list that we have here, which seems to be the most popular list of the archetype right now, is one by JonesAF. It's his Spider Aggro with Vladimir and obviously some synergy cards to go along with it, like Crimson Disciple and Transfusion. Other than that, we have a very typical Spiders aggro with the usual like Spiders cards, aggressive 1-drops, and just topping it off with crowd favorite. This deck has been the first sort of big deck to beat, or rather second deck to beat after the initial Freljord Elusives, early in the Masters Climb of people, and now it's kind of back with a vengeance. As we can see, 63.1% win rate is really high, higher than the highest win rate deck last time. To be fair, the sample size here is smaller, it's like 600-ish games, but still a pretty solid sample size to support this win rate. So if you like that deck and kind of shelved it in the past, now it might be a time to dust it off and take it for another spin. Either this more creative version by JonesAF or a more traditional one. Overall, the archetype is doing really well. Let's move on to the second highest win rate deck. Alright, this is not too surprising. Elusives are still around and going strong. Arguably, they even do better than before. Last time I think they had like a win rate of 61.1%, although the sample size was a bit higher, and here we have a 61.5% with a smaller sample size. So overall, probably around the same. Even like 0.4 is not a big difference, especially with the difference in sample size and so on. The performance is probably plus minus the same, which is pretty impressive given that there were balance changes that negatively affected the archetype, but the archetype reinvented itself, adjusted, and came back swinging. The buff to Jewel Protector certainly helped compensate for the nerf to Mentor, pushing the archetype in a bit more top-end mid-range strategy and less of a low-to-the-ground aggressive strategy like last time. So yeah, as I said, deck soon to go more into detail about the deck, its versions and card choices, but as you can see, it's still top 2 win rate, just like before the balance patch, so some things just never change apparently. And in number 3, we have Heimerdinger Karma Aggro Control by Wraptero, aka Raptor, aka Josh Utter-Layton, Magic Hall of Famer and pro and game designer. He hit rank 1 before the right before the balance patch with this list, and even though Deny got bumped to 4, which is quite noteworthy in a deck with Heimerdinger, the deck is still doing really well. Since then, people have just kept playing it. This version has cut 1 Deny for a Steel Tempest, which is not actually directly coming from Josh Utter-Layton. Someone else must have made that change, and it has been, according to the dataset, the most popular list, so that's why I took it. Not sure how I feel about that one of Steel Tempest, but it's one card change. It really doesn't matter that much. So yeah, this is the third highest win rate deck. We had an Azrael, Heimerdinger, Karma Ionia deck last time already that was doing really well. It was actually highest win rate. With the metagame changing, Heimerdinger becoming more of a thing, people being more aware of it, and playing fewer decks that are super vulnerable to it, and arguably the new Elusives being a lot less vulnerable to it, thanks to stuff like Jewel Protector and Hatchling making your Elusives fight a lot better against the 3-1 Elusive turrets. The win rate presumably went down due to those factors, but the deck is still going strong in third place of overall win rate. Alright, let's move on to deck number 4. In fourth place, we have Fearsome, but not the Demacia version that we looked at before. It's actually the Pnz Splash. This particular most popular version of the archetype splashes 2 Beam, 2 Get Excited, and 3 Mystic Shot for additional removal / reach. 58.4% win rate. As we can see here, the win rate of the archetype was affected much more by the balance changes, both changes in the metagame and changes to the archetype's cards itself. Last time I think the win rate was around 60%, so we lost around 1.5 to 2% win rate here, which is reasonable, but above 58% win rate is still really good, so no surprise that the deck makes the top 5 cut in both categories, even though here the Pnz version and in popularity the Demacia version. I'm not sure how I feel about this list. I'm not a big fan of splashing more than 6 cards. I would stick to 5 or 6 cards most, since Race Caller is such a powerful card and you really don't want to cripple it. So if you want to play this, I would recommend not splashing more than 6 cards. And in 5th place, we actually have more Fearsome. There's the Demacia version from the popularity category again. Just close behind the Pnz version, 58% win rate instead of 58.4%. And to be fair, the difference between those two could be attributed to variance and sample size. So they probably do about the same, which is interesting to note that it seems to not matter that much which region you splash. The core of the cards, the SI core of the archetype, seems to be what matters, and the splash is just like nuances. It probably gains you some percentages there and loses you some percentages elsewhere. So the overall performance long term of the archetype seems to not be particularly affected by what region you seem to splash. So it's more of a matter of what works best against the archetypes you face, rather than that there is a clear best region to splash, it seems. Alright, so yeah, I didn't really have another deck to add here. If I would have compounded the 2 Fearsome decks in 4th place, the 5th place would have just been like so far behind with like I think 54.9%, which is actually the burn deck, that I felt like I'd rather just leave the 2 Fearsomes here, since the gap is so big to 5th place, and burn really isn't doing that well. It's the most popular deck, but people are also really prepared for it and gunning for it. And 54.9%, so barely 55%, is also not a particularly impressive win rate. So yeah, it's technically a top 4 this time, if you want to look at it that way. Anyway, Fearsome and Elusives, even post-patch, are doing really well. They're just doing less well than before, especially Fearsome. Elusives less so. Elusives mostly dipped in popularity a bit, but not in performance, and Fearsome dipped quite a bunch in both, but not to a point that it isn't a tier 1 deck anymore. Alright, let me know in the comments below what you think of the top 5 lists and of how the metagame has evolved and changed since the balance patch, how you feel about the decks and the metagame right now. Just let's have a conversation. And of course, if you have any constructive feedback, criticism, things you would like to see in the future or that you think I should or could improve, let me know down below. And otherwise, you know the drill. Hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification icon for more. Leave a like, share with your friends, and so on and so forth. And yeah, that's it again for this time. I'm your host, ManuS. I thank you for watching, and I see you next time. Bye.